Welcome to Ladies of Another View on Beck. I am joined today by Carmen.
Hello.
Hello, and we have a couple guests today. We have, to Carmen's immediate left, would be Dr. Steve Nagel. He's been with us several times.
Yeah.
And we want to welcome you
Always
back on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for
You
coming.
always bring good information to us.
Love it.
And then Steve had actually pretty much just told us, hey, you got to have this guy on. So we got this guy on. This is Mark, do you pronounce it Herr?
Herr, yes.
Herr. Mark Herr. He's the president of Center for Self-Governance. He's an author and he's a film producer. So right here in the Beck studio, we're going to talk about that, a lot of those issues.
It's not every day. Usually we say, 3 ladies and a dude. We got 2 ladies
Yeah.
and 2 dudes.
There you
50-50
go.
today.
You don't see that every day.
Yeah, and that was a Trent Luce thing. And Trent Luce is actually going to have a show right here on Beck as well. He's the one that said Ladies of Another View and a Dude. That's
Right.
what he wanted the show to be. But we
Right.
got a couple dudes, which, by the way, Beck has been nominated, or not nominated. We actually won Best of the Best.
Yeah.
We are #1 for local television, so that makes everybody else #2. Right? So anyway,
yeah.
thanks for joining us today. We're going to hop right to it. Steve, why did you recommend getting Mark on our show?
Great question. I had met Mark about a year and a half ago, I think, about a year or so ago, and he had been to town teaching a couple classes on this concept of self-governance and this concept of not so much treating political symptoms, but going to the cause, right? Of where are these problems actually coming from? Who's coming up with them? Where and why is there seem to be so much division? Why do we feel like we're always chasing 500 different problems all at the same time, especially the last 12 months? And that's how we look. That's how I look at the human body. So, what are the triggers? What are the causes? Instead of treating symptoms, and so that's where his message and his teachings to me made perfect sense. And I think if we're going to make progress and to win and preserve our not so much win, but preserve our freedoms, preserve our republic, that we need to learn how to play this game.
How to navigate the system, basically.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's such a menagerie. It's like overwhelming when it's like, where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah, and we have so many different. There's just so many passionate people, but where do we put that passion?
Right.
You can have the best athlete in the world, but if they don't know how to play the sport,
Right.
it's kind of all for naught.
So, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in this? Just kind of give us your background.
So we've got to be careful about opening up that Pandora's box. But essentially, I lived all over the world because my father was in the military, and ended up serving my entire Air Force career in Tokyo, Japan. And so there were some political events that took place in the United States in 2008 that I was concerned about. So I went to a meeting, and at this meeting, there were 16 people, and I just happened to be the last person that they came around to, and everybody had just met each other for the first time and was like, so who are you and why are you here? I like what you're and by the time it got to me, I didn't bring up my issue because my training is in troubleshooting and fixing problems on military aircraft. And everybody had a different issue, and I realized that our conversation was going nowhere. It had taken an hour to get to me, who are you and what's your problem? And I'm like, that is such a time-sucking black hole. And I get the whole relationship, getting to know each other, but so I asked everybody, I said, hey, my name's Mark, but can somebody tell me what the problem is? Nobody, it was so that question seemed to be so divisive because it was like everybody's issue was the most important issue of all time. So that's kind of the genesis of me getting involved in doing what I do now, is helping people understand the difference between partisan and systematic politics. They're 2 different genres of politics, and in systematic politics, you learn how to set aside symptomatic conversations and have systematic conversations where you're actually producing solutions, forward-thinking, future-thinking, solution-based ideas for politics. And so this 10-year journey for me has been researching how to encapsulate that in a training program and how to empower people to shift from apocalyptic, symptomatic conversations where they seem to go nowhere and drive it towards systematic conversations that are going somewhere, that are future forward thinking and politically successful.
So instead of living in the problem, you help people learn how to live in the solution.
That's
basically.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome because we don't have near enough of that. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, the symptoms are, it's very easy to figure out the symptoms when you're in a conversation and you're not having a forward thinking conversation, just practically, not just politically, but anything. At some point, it becomes either divisive or you feel like it's a suck on your time. And you're wasting your time, and so then you're naturally going to try to pursue something that's going to interest you or whatever. Well, in society, if we could have conversations with each other that are systematic, forward-thinking, not just in the political realm, innovation, creation, ideas, synergy, increases, right? Just practically. I know it's on a kind of a big 50,000-foot scale, but just practically in our human relationships, if we could shift from how bad it is to how good we can make it, we can identify innovation, solutions, creations. People want to be in that environment. And for me personally, that's just, it turned out to be political, but the thing I've learned the most in these last 10 years is if I can empower people to shift from symptomatic conversations where it's apocalyptic, there's the road to nowhere, versus systematic conversations where we can innovate, create, forward thinking, identify solutions, people are much happier there.
Right.
Sure, and then also show them how to get through the obstacles and the roadblocks along the way, because it seems like everything, when you try to do something, there's always something that tries to pop up to stop it. Like there's a huge movement right now across the country, and people are afraid. And
They are.
is that a conversation that they're going to learn by going to your session this weekend?
Yes. So the first question I ask people, like in our political leadership training, is, so have you felt the political pain, or do you just see the political pain? And can you identify, kind of like a doctor would say, is like, can you tell me the symptoms? What are your symptoms? And it's so interesting when we have in the very first class is this conversation about the symptomatic conversations. I usually will let them go on for about a half hour or so. And I just, when they kind of run out of all the apocalyptic things about how bad it is and that everything's going to the road to nowhere, I say, if you would like to transition from that time-sucking black hole where we just reviewed every single thing that's bad, to a conversation about, okay, we already know it's bad. We already know there's a problem. To what is the source or the cause of the problem, whether it's political, I mean, and for me, it's the political class. Let's make that transition. And normally that happens in the first 30 to 40 minutes of our class, and people are like, okay, how can I start not wasting, right? Or no, how do I stop wasting other people's time? By reviewing the problems we already know exist, and get straight to how can we together as a community, under whatever issue, work together to fix the problem. Does it make sense?
It certainly does.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
We have a lot to talk about. We're going to take a quick break because I don't want to even start another question before then, but we're going to come right back after this on Ladies of Another View on Beck. Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. We are joined by Mark Herr, the president of Center for Self-Governance, and also Dr. Steve Nagel. And during the break, we were kind of visiting a little bit, and just the way you described that, that you want people to help themselves in a sense. It's just like you, Dr. Steve, you treat people, you don't just give them a pill and make them go away.
Right.
It's like you teach them how to, for their body to work for itself, basically.
Right.
And you're teaching the same thing is the way I see it.
Right. Communities to be able to work for themselves, to better their community, to navigate the system. And I'm going to throw this in because I have challenged a few people. A game that I started to play with myself and I quit because there's no win. It's a no-win. But you have to be able to connect dots and really think through everything in your life. Name one thing in your life that government doesn't touch. And I have yet for somebody to come up with something, because if you connect dots, sooner or later you get to a tax or you get to a restriction or you get to a, whatever. But when you're talking about, now that's the symptomatic thing, and I can sit in that and just go crazy, or I can go, okay, how do I how do I approach fixing some of this? At least making a start. And you're talking systematic. Like, for instance, you know, the whole thing with school boards now and all the parents that are showing up and now they're being labeled domestic terrorists. I mean, can you address that a little bit for us?
So most people don't participate in politics until they feel the pain. And in this case, parents are raising their children the best way they know how, whether they're Democrats, Independents, or Republicans across your great state. And when an issue pops up, let's say like a mask or vaccine or whatever, Common Core, critical race theory, comprehensive sex education, all these kind of issues that pop up, parents will have different reactions to what they perceive as the political pain. And so you're seeing an increase in the number of parents across the nation, not just in North Dakota, starting to show up at their school board meetings and trying to become part of the political process and voice their opinions about how their children should be educated according to their opinion. Now, recently, a Democrat governor candidate from Virginia said in a debate, I don't think parents should be telling schools how to teach their children. And so parents would naturally be like, kind of cluck their head to the side, what just happened? What did you just say? And then the very next day, the National School Board Association, which represents 14,000 school districts in the United States, that would be the 244 school districts of North Dakota, who this national association represents, sent a letter to President Biden asking him to commit federal resources to investigating parents as domestic terrorists.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And so parents would be like, wait a minute, somebody who's running for governor literally said, I don't think parents should tell schools how to teach my children. Number two,
wow.
I've got a National School Board Association, which the 244 school districts of North Dakota are being represented by, is now asking the president to commit federal resources to investigate parents as domestic terrorists for participating in the political process. And then the very next day, President Biden's Secretary of Education, being interviewed in a congressional committee, says, I don't think parents are primary stakeholders in children's education. So now a parent's sitting here going, wait a second, I shouldn't tell the school how to teach my kid. I'm being labeled a domestic terrorist, and I'm not a primary stakeholder?
In my child's life.
Okay, those are all symptoms of something going wrong with the system. The parent's natural response is, I'm going to go to the school board, which is the closest thing they know. My first recommendation to parents is this. Number one, it's really important that you do not go to the school board in a confrontational approach. Not because you shouldn't be defending your child's education, but you need to understand the National School Board Association's influence over your 244 school districts in this state and the other 14,000 whatever across country has more influence than you do right now over your school board. So the key is, how do you interact with your school board in such a way to increase or balance your influence with a National School Board Association that has direct access to the president? Because on October 4th, the Attorney General of the United States ordered the FBI to begin committing resources to start surveilling the 14,000 school districts in the United States. So that's more influence than the parents are experiencing right now. So their influence is purposely being reduced. So a second suggestion is, what if you were to go to your school board or school board members without any confrontation as a parent, just say, hey, school board member X, I've been labeled a terrorist because I'm participating in the political process. I've been told that I shouldn't be involved in telling the school board what to teach my children, and I have somebody who believes that I'm not a primary stakeholder in my child's education. Would you be willing to pass a resolution countering that? As a parent, I'm not coming in here. I'm not coming in to talk about the symptoms, critical race theory, comprehensive sex, Common Core, mass. You know what I mean? It's like we get exhausted with it. Mm-hmm. Instead, go to the school board and simply say, are you guys willing to pass a resolution that says what the NSBA says is not what we support? Because we're a member. We don't support that position. And number two, our resolution states we believe parents are stakeholders and that they have a right to participate in the process and they have a say in their child's education. Would you guys be willing to pass that resolution? Could you imagine if 244 school districts in the state of North Dakota passed that resolution? What would that do to the influence of the NSBA, the National School Board Association, and the parents' influence? Would it start to balance it again? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Because there's a need for cooperation and sharing ideas in national associations.
Sure.
But what happens when their influence gets to that point where they can coordinate with the President of the United States to label parents of North Dakota as terrorists
Right.
and not having a stakeholdership in their child's education? Anyway, practical example of something they can do to fix the system together across the state of
Well,
North
and it
Dakota.
makes so much sense because a lot of people think they're like a bull in a china cabinet. They just come in, oh, I'm going to get something done. Boy, I gave them my 2 cents. And it's like, that's not how you get things done. It's got to be on a respectful level. And that's probably why they're saying these domestic terrorists, or because I'm going to have your job. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what's going on, in my opinion, that there probably is some level of threat going on. But I think it's no different than, I'm going to meet you after class. You know what I'm saying?
Does it rise to the level of domestic terrorism?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
But they're going to take, right now, they're going to take anything they can to try to get rid of the parents' influence. And that's just, okay, well, here's another way. And it's like, so we as parents and citizens, we can't give them that opportunity. We have got to, keep yourself in check and do it the right way.
Yeah, just like with the body, is in terms of understanding a body, in this case, in terms of understanding politics, if we learn the system,
Yep.
we'll stop a lot less reaction to the symptoms and start focusing more on fixing the system. And this is just one example of how they can do it. Don't go to the school board in confrontation. Realize there's an external influence that has more than you do right now as a parent. So what is your strategy to regain some of that influence for the other parent's sake? Well, ask the school board, do you support that letter? Number 2, are you willing to recognize us as stakeholders? And would you be willing to put that on paper and your name to it?
Right.
Wow.
It's a practical application of systematic politics.
That is a
Yeah.
great advice for everyone.
Well, and self-governance, we're hearing that a lot from, on a national level, some of the people kind of leading the movement of freedom, that self-governance and how we've let that go. And what you're talking about is now we have a way to learn how to navigate the system so that we can take back our local control, and then perhaps that will build out throughout the nation if more and more people know how to do it.
Well, remember, too, people want to be a part of innovation, creation, ideas, generations, fixes, solutions. If we stay in the symptomatic realm, imagine just the conversation on just those categories of critical race theory, how many hours that would take. Comprehensive sex ed, Common Core, vaccines, mask, and then how much what it causes in our community in terms of division. I'm not saying that the debate should be there. We should be able to have the civil debate, but if we don't fix the system, the division will be like cancerous. It'll just continue to multiply.
growing.
We can reverse that, is the point that I'm trying to make, in terms of understanding the difference between a symptomatic political conversation and a systematic political conversation like we just had.